boys and girls. Welcome to another broadcast of the Lawrence Report. On tonight's broadcast, we will be discussing Lawmen, Bass Reeves. Now, I've been excited about this right here for a long time when I saw the trailer, starring David Oyelowo and Lauren E. Banks. So I was thrilled when I saw this right here, that this was finally coming out right here. Now, I'm glad Hollywood is actually doing something major on the great Bass Reeves himself. Now, for those of you who don't know about Bass Reeves, I'm going to give you a quick overview of just who this great man was in our history. Bass Reeves was the first black U.S. deputy, U.S. Marshal, actually. He was born to slavery in 1838. Reeves and his family were owned by Arkansas State Legislator William Reeves. Bass Reeves went on to serve over 30 years and brought 3,000 criminals to justice. During his time, of course, he escaped slavery, but at the same time, while he was a marshal, he reportedly was never injured. Now, we see at the very beginning of this story right here on our screens here, Bass is unfortunately thrown into war. Of course, he has to do what his master tells him. So he's at the Pea Ridge, Arkansas Confederate Army. That's currently the war that they're fighting right now. And Major George Reeves, he hands Bass a gun. He says, hey, let's do this right here. I need your help. And, Bass is a sharpshooter, a sharp slinger, I guess you could say. And his slave owner, they are thrown into battle against these soldiers or whatever the case may be. And, they defeat them and things of that nature right there. But, later on, as it's sitting up for campsite, one of the crazy things I see is Bass Reeves and his owner, Colonel George Reeves. They are, it's campsite at nighttime and they're just resting and they're talking. And Bass was a pretty literate person. He's a very smart guy, very smart individual. And as they're having a conversation about, basically kind of like about, heaven, right? And the generals, says that, well, you're not going to go to heaven. He basically says black people. Well, of course he didn't say black people back then, but he said, the N-word people, you guys don't make it to heaven. And Bass Reeves kind of gives him this funny look like, are you serious? Are we not all a part of, God's kingdom? In which we all are. All races, all creed, all ethnicities are a part of, God's creation, right? So later in the series, we see Bass and George Reeves there returning back to George Reeves' house. And George Reeves is so impressed about, the way what Bass has been, following the orders and doing things of that nature right there. He says, I think I'm going to free you. And of course, Bass is a little bit skeptical. And of course, who wouldn't be skeptical? Like, you're just going to let, your former slave go like that. But as always, I shouldn't say always, but unfortunately, there is a trick that Bass picks up. So Reeves and Bass, they play a card game. He's like, hey, basically, if you beat me in this card game, I'm going to let you go. I'm going to let you escape freedom. And again, Bass is, says he's confused about it. He even says, that in the series, or he even says that, well, yeah, I'm slightly confused, Massa, that you're going to let me go, Massa. You know what I'm saying? I would have been surprised too. So they play the card game. And unfortunately, General Reeves basically rigs the game. He kind of like cheats Bass, right? Because Bass thinks that, with, all the cards that he has, he thinks that, oh my God, I'm actually going to be free. I'm going to get a chance to be free. Like, I'll be a free slave. The game is rigged. Him and Bass get into an argument. Bass goes berserks. Bass goes crazy. He actually beats up his former master. We find out in the story that, he didn't kill him, but the master was brutally beaten. So, he goes to his wife, which is Lauren E. Banks' character, and he lets her know that I just beat up a white man and I got to go. I can't stay here. And, his wife tells him, yes, go ahead and leave. I don't want to see you strung up in a tree knowing that you just beat up the master on this plantation, whatever. So Bass Reeves leaves. He's sneaking out in the night, and unfortunately, he is caught up between three men with torches. And they ask Bass, like, "Hey, why are you out here late at night without your master? What's going on right here?" And Bass does a small talk with him. Of course, like I said, Bass is a sharpshooter. He ends up killing those three men. And Bass goes on about his way, trying to escape, trying to basically get to the Indian territory. And he gets there. Of course, you're traveling at nighttime. You're going into murky water. Snakes could be out there, alligators could be out there, mosquitoes. You're worried about all those things, but you're also trying to find a way to escape to freedom. And we see, fortunately, Bass is, kind of cut up pretty bad from his foot to other parts of his body. And he does make it into the Indian territory. While he's there resting, he hears a shotgun. And the shotgun is of a Seminole woman by the name of Sarah. She asks him, who is he? And he goes on to tell her, who he is, like he's a runaway, basically, right? She asks him, is he Seminole, right? And he's not Seminole, of course, but he just said, I'm a runaway. And they're talking and basically explaining each other's past to each other. And she's like, yeah, well, my son, not my son, but my husband, he died in this war, which back then, a lot of times, the black and, the Native Americans, they called it the white man's war, because they feel like they really didn't have much to, gain from this war. And she was like, yeah, well, my husband died in hopes that my son would never have to feel the whip of the white man or even having to fight in the white man's war. And as they're talking, the son is teaching Bass how to fish, right? So I believe the way it was looking in the video, well, in the series, it looks like they were taking their thumb, and the fish would nibble on the thumb, and then that's how you would be able to catch the fish. So I love that right there. How Sarah's son and Bass, they was kind of bonding. And later we see Bass and the son, they go into like a trading territory, like a trading post or whatever, and they're looking to trade a couple items at the store. But unfortunately, they are caught up in a battle between some soldiers who, basically raid the trading post. And one of the men, he ends up killing Sarah's son, unfortunately. I think it was like a shot to the looks like it was to the abdomen of the little boy, basically straight to the gut, right? And Bass Reeves has to go back to Sarah to let her know that, unfortunately, your son, he died. And Sarah and Bass both agree that it's time for Bass to return back to, where he came from. So Bass goes back home, and he's looking for his wife, but his wife isn't there. It's actually George Reeves' wife actually greets Bass. She's like, "Don't worry, I'm not going to tell him that you're here." And she tells Bass that his that his wife has fled to yeah. So the wife, tells Bass that his wife, Jenny, has been sent to Arkansas, and of course, Fort Smith, Arkansas, actually. So Bass, he takes his horse and goes to Arkansas. He discovers her, there working, and of course, at first he's nervous because he hasn't seen his wife in quite some time. It's been a couple of years since the last time we've seen each other, and he meets her, and Jenny, his wife, is met with a little girl. And Bass is like, I hope this new man is treating you right. And Jeannie mentions that, well, yeah, he's treating me right so far, but sometimes he's stubborn, and sometimes he likes to go away. And it is revealed that this little girl is actually Bass's daughter. I did read that Bass, he actually had 11 kids, believe it or not. Woo, that's a lot. 11 kids. Anyway, so Bass and his wife, they reconnect. And in episode two, we see kind of a time jump, it looks like. Bass Reeves' kids are kind of like teenagers, and he's on the farm, currently farming. But, as he's farming, he's approached by a U.S. Marshal by the name of Cheryl Lynn. There's a judge basically Judge Parker, who wanted Cheryl Lynn to recruit Bass Reeves. Of course, everyone in the Western frontier knows that Bass Reeves is just one of the best, marksmen that they have. And Bass, he decides to take on the offer because, for one, his crops aren't growing the way they should be, and the family is kind of like, in need of the money. And Cheryl Lynn tells him that, the person that they're looking for is a Native American by the name of one Charlie. One Charlie is basically wanted for shooting and killing another U.S. Marshal. At the same time, he's in trouble for bringing liquor or whiskey to the forefront, which was a bad charge back then. So Bass, he takes him up on the offer, and he talks it over with his wife, and she says, "Yeah, you should go do this right here." And one of the reasons why Cheryl Lynn needed Bass, because Bass is able to speak the Choctaw Nation's language. Being in the Indian Territory, Bass was able to work with the Native Americans a lot, and so they go out on this frontier to explore, different parts of the area, trying to get a lead on one Charlie. And they could come across his, at first they believe that is his wife, but it's actually his cousin. And Bass and the cousin are speaking in the native language. And later they do end up finding one Charlie. But, for Cheryl Lynn, he kind of has some deep bitterness in his heart towards the Native Americans. I mean, at one point in time, it was revealed that he was about to be scalped by one of the Native Americans, and he's always had that hate. He's always had that hate, basically, in his heart towards the Native American community. And Bass is telling him, like, "Hey, man, you need to let this hate out of your heart." But of course, being a bitter racist white man back in the day, he couldn't just let it go. But as the story progresses and as the mission progresses, they do end up finding one Charlie, and they're trying to get him to come out of this building, but he shoots at them. And in my mind, it's looking like Bass wants to find another way of, how can we take him down, but at the same time keep him alive. But unfortunately, Cheryl Lynn, he goes out guns blazing. He creates like a Mazel Tov cocktail and throws it into the building where one Charlie is. And Bass Reeves is like, "Hey, why'd you do that? Why'd you do that?" He's like, "I feel like this is the only way it's gonna work." So Bass Reeves is, forced to basically kill one take Charlie. He didn't want to do it like that. You can see it in his eyes, but he had no choice due to the actions that Cheryl Lynn did. And Bass and Cheryl, they get into this big fight. And at this point in time, Bass is an honorable man, right? A man of integrity. He's like, "You know what? Keep the money. I'll find a way. I'll find a way." He walks away from Cheryl Lynn. And then, Cheryl Lynn, he goes back to the judge, let them know that, "Hey, we did end up finding Charlie, and we killed him." And, of course, you got to get the background. How'd you kill him? And the judge, he makes an offer to tell Cheryl Lynn to tell Bass Reeves. So Judge Parker hears, how things went down, and Cheryl Lynn tells him how things went down, and so now the judge is saying, "Hey, I think we may need to recruit Bass Reeves as one of us. He needs to become a U.S. Marshal." So Cheryl Lynn, you know, comes back to Bass Reeves' farm to tell him basically the good news, and Bass Reeves is like, "Oh, okay, wow, this is big time. Justice is on his way." And now Bass Reeves officially becomes a U.S. Marshal. Ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoy westerns, if you enjoy the Great Frontier, Cowboys and Indians, things of that nature, this is the series for you. Trust me, right here. I'm enjoying it. I hope you guys will definitely check this out. If you like what you saw today, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like, share, and comment. And as always, thank you for tuning in to the Lawrence Report.